What counts in making a happy marriage is not so much how compatible you are, but how you, as a husband and wife, deal with incompatibility. Leo Tolstoy, Russian author. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Okay. What are we going to talk about today? I'm talking about relationships. I don't really give relationship advice a lot just because, I don't really feel like that's the domain that I operate in. However, I see so much bad information on the internet. And it's kind of weird. I spend, if you're talking in terms of social media time, I spend more time on X than I do any other platform. After that, I'll sometimes jump on Facebook and just kind of check in and see what friends are doing. And I do like watching the reels. And it's kind of funny because on X, I will see some of the absolute worst advice ever. And a lot of it, at least what I see, is coming from supposedly men or male driven accounts directed at men, young men, like these alpha accounts, and it's just terrible. And, but when I'm on Facebook and I'm like just kind of sitting there scrolling through reels, I see some amazing advice. It's I'm like, if we could get the relationship advice from Facebook moved over to X, things might be a little bit better for people. But it's just wild. So there was this video. Oh, you know what? By the way, I want to tell you, uh, I do the Dad Talk series on Fridays. I'm excited to tell you, and I will get the graphics out sometime today. But if you follow a man named Mark K, he's out of here. He's out of Jacksonville here in Jacksonville. He will be on the show tomorrow evening, 6:30 p.m. So tune in for that. He's a significantly bigger podcast host. He's going to come on the show. We're going to talk about, well, if you know about my Dad Talk series, you know that I invite dads on to talk about what's important to them. That's my way of raising dad voices. So he will be on tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. He is a fellow talking head, if you will. So he's a podcast host. He's a podcast host, and his platform is, a teensy weensy bit bigger than mine. But he's no, I mean he's significantly bigger. But so he's going to come on and talk, and his world revolves around politics, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about in the context of being a dad, because he has a couple kids. And what's going to be funny about it is my rule for me on Dad Talk is that I don't argue, and this is going to test my rule for me because Mark is a Republican and I'm a libertarian. So there are some areas where we're going to agree, and there are going to be some areas where we disagree. And since he talks politics and I talk politics, it's going to be tough for me to not want to argue with him. But I'm going to hold fast. You'll see. I'll do a good job. I promise. Or maybe I won't. No, I guess I can't promise and then say I won't, right? That doesn't make sense. But anyway, so that should be a good, fun conversation tomorrow night, 6:30. So make sure you tune in for that. All right. So today we're talking about battle of the sexes. This is an age old problem, men versus women. And, I already said that there's tons of terrible advice out there. So I saw this video, it was actually a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or two ago. And it went viral all over X. There's this woman discussing this divorce that she almost had with her husband, and she got taken through the ringer. And I'm not going to do that. Like a lot of people gave her a lot of grief. And actually, I think what happened was she posted it to like some other platform, like I don't remember. Well, maybe at the end of the video, it shows that it's from TikTok. I don't remember, but she posted on a different platform. Somebody pulled it down, and they posted it in agreement on their on their account on X. And so then people retweeted it, and they were just criticizing the woman in the video. So there was a lot of criticism, and not all of it was unfair. Some of it was because, again, on X, if you're looking for good relationship advice, just close the app. Don't even bother. This is terrible advice, right? In fact, I'm not going to pull it up, but I want to read to you something that just came through this morning. And it was absolutely, I was like, what? Where did it go? Let me see if I can't. Where did that? Where did it go here? Um, oh man, where did it? Yeah, here it is. So this woman says story time, and then she's like goes into this story about how she was out with her friend, and she noticed that her friend was always, able to pick up guys, and like guys just never wanted to talk to her, and she was like, what's going wrong? And the woman, her friend, is like, look, you've got resting bee face, you need to like lighten up, you need to look approachable. And then she's like, so like, what do I do? Just like wink at a guy? And her friend was like, yes, when you see a cute guy and he looks at you, wink at him. And so then the woman said, so I tried it. And she was like, I winked at this guy. And she said, like 2 minutes later, the guy's over and sitting next to her, buying her a drink. And then they ended up dating for a couple of months. And so then I kind of chimed in with my own story. And I was just like, my wife and I met at a mutual friend's party. She didn't approach me, she just casually asked about the t-shirt that I was wearing. And then I said we became friends, and eventually I asked to take it a step further, and then proposed. Here we are, married with a child 12 years later. And so somebody quoted me, and they said, "You are a whore." What? What? Like, I can't stop laughing about that. Like, this is the kind of response that you get on X. Like, I'm a whore because I met a woman. We struck up a conversation. We became friends. We got married. We had a kid. Totally the definition. Anyway, so let's watch this video. I'm going to chime in periodically. So I'm going to show you actually two videos. In the first half of the show, I'm going to show you the video of the woman that went viral. It's a 5-minute video. We'll try to get through it pretty quickly. And then after that, I'll show you a competing video. And in my opinion, a competing video. It wasn't, the second video was not done in in a response to the first. In fact, they had no relationship to each other whatsoever. I just think it was pretty valuable. So we're going to show you these two videos. So let's start with that first one here. And then we'll see what we learn about the battle of the sexes, relationships, and how you two can have a successful relationship. So let's watch.
I've been with my husband for almost 20 years, but about 3 years ago, I was strongly considering divorce. And I want to talk to you about why. So I'm going to tell you the story of the day where I thought to myself, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. My husband and I had 4 kids. We both worked full time. We had been together for 16 years at this point. We've been together since high school. And on paper, I have an amazing husband. He is incredibly supportive. He's kind. He's loyal. He's a great dad. He's very hands-on. He's an active participant. He's always present. Like on paper, what else could I ask for?
Okay, we just on paper. Like, I've been married twice now. First time for 5 years, and now for 12 years. So I've got a whole 17 years of experience. And I don't think I've ever heard or said I've got a good relationship on paper. I'm not even sure what that means. I mean, I think I understand what she's trying to get at. Is that like, hey, if you look at all these common things, the things that people look for, they're all there. But just describing your relationship is on paper a good relationship. That strikes me as a bit of a problem in the first place. And mind you, I'm not here to just criticize the heck out of the woman. And you'll see here in a few minutes that I actually, in some ways, agree with her. But I just think there's more to the story. So let's continue on. I think that's just weird. Please don't ever just like, whether you're a man or a woman, please don't ever describe your relationship as on paper. It was a good relationship, because that's really, really weird. All right, let's continue.
But in reality, My experience is very similar to the experience of other women. I had this amazing husband who on paper was great, but I was incredibly frustrated and burnt out from our marriage and from motherhood. Because what happens to so many of us is that we marry these amazing men and we have amazing relationships and then we have kids. And when we have kids, women tend to carry a disproportionate amount of the work in the home, the work of raising kids, and the mental load. And that is exactly what happened to us.
Okay. Not disagreeing whatsoever. This does happen. It happens all the time. It happens actually before you have kids. Like many women will be like, oh, I've got to do all this. I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do it. And that is true. However, a lot of that is self-imposed. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just kind of want to put that thought into your head like, wait a minute, what's self-imposed? If you're a woman and you're watching or you're listening, and you're like, wait a minute, what do you mean self-imposed? Just don't get angry. I want you to just think about that. Just think about all the things that you have to do or that you believe you have to do that you do. And then I want you to think about the term self-imposed. Just think about that. All right, let's continue.
About 3 months after my fourth baby was born, I remember looking at my husband and saying, I need more. I need you to do more. I am exhausted. I am in charge of everyone and everything in this house. Every night when we cook dinner, you ask me what to make. Every day when you drop off the kids at daycare, you ask me what they need in their backpacks. I am the project manager of this home and I need you to do more.
Okay. She's like, I'm the project manager. The question that you have to ask yourself is, why are you the project manager? Did you self-designate yourself? Right? Did you self-designate as the project manager? Or did you and your husband get together and your husband said, all right, look, woman, these are all your responsibilities and I expect you to do them. And if you don't do them, I will be very angry with you. Is that what happened? Likely not. Likely what happened is that you chose to take on all those responsibilities. Now, a lot of women will push back and they'll say, do they need to be done? No disagreement. You're right. These things need to be done. But if you looked at a bunch of tasks and you said, these need to be done, I will do them, those are self-imposed. Let's continue.
And he looked at me and he said, okay, just tell me what to do, right? Every woman has heard this. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I said, okay, something that would make my life easier is if in the mornings when I came downstairs with the 4 kids, because I do mornings by myself, the dishwasher was emptied, the dishes were put away, and the trash was taken out. That would make my life so much easier because when I've got the 4 kids running around and the baby crying, I can't be looking for their favorite water bottle in the dishwasher. I just need to know it's clean. And he said, yeah, of course. What? Yeah, I'll do that. That's no problem.
Okay. I'm good with this. That's a good way. Like the division of labor in the home has to happen. Like, hey, here are these things. And then you have to figure out, you have to work with each other to determine who will do what. Okay. And what's interesting is what she's about to say and then what she says later. So watch this.
And so, of course, he does it. But then I have to remind him, and then he forgets, and then I have to remind him again. And there was this one morning where I woke up and I went to put something in the trash and it was overflowing. And I went to get my son's water bottle and it was in the dishwasher with all the other clean dishes. And I felt so disrespected and unseen and unvalued at that point in time. And I remember texting my husband being like, what happened? Like, why didn't you do this? And he said, sorry, I was running late for work. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he doesn't see me because what he's done has now made me late for work. And he doesn't care about that.
Okay. So number one, she says, all right, we made this agreement and I had to remind him and I had to remind him. And then one day I woke up and bam, all these things aren't done. So she had to remind him a couple of times, which makes sense. If you're taking on a new task, sometimes it takes, and this is not an excuse for men. This is everybody. When you start, like, I want you to think about it. You decide you're going to go, who out there has decided that they're going to start a brand new diet? You're like, man, I need to lose some weight. You could be a man, you could be a woman, and you're like, I'm going to lose some weight. And what happens in that first week? Everything that you don't want to eat somehow gets put in front of you, right? Like that's how it works. And you make some failures. Or maybe you go the first week and you're like, wow, I did it this whole week. I didn't eat any bread, right? Something like that. Whatever it is that you're changing. But then the next week comes and then the challenges come, right? And then maybe you make mistakes. You fall off the wagon. Like we have a phrase that we apply to diets and other things like that, going to the gym for a reason, because people, that takes time for them to get into a good routine. They're going to make mistakes, right? Like I'll tell you right now, with this podcast, I was personally feeling frustrated, and not because my wife wasn't doing anything or needed to do more. Just I was like, all right, look, I think we got to work out our schedule a little bit differently so that we can get things done. Like everybody can have their cake and eat it too. Right. And I just was and part of it was me looking and saying, I got certain things that I do in the morning, and I try to get up at like 5 a.m. and I'm trying to do all these things and prepare for my show. And I'm like, all right, the problem is when I looked at it, I said, okay, what's going on? Why am I not able to always do this? And I looked and I realized, oh, it's a tight time frame, and the smallest thing can blast it out of space. Like, like my kid gets up, he's feeling grumpy, he has whatever, he spills his milk, and now, whatever, like simple things, super simple things that happen to anybody. And it can throw me off. So I was like, all right, I need to adjust so that I have more time and more flexibility if something goes wrong, because the tight schedule doesn't permit anything. And so therefore, I came up with this new plan, and I talked to my wife and I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, we're going to do this and this. And I kind of laid it out. She's like, okay, yeah, that sounds fair. She's like, that sounds reasonable. And I said, if we make a mistake, if something happens and this new schedule gets disrupted, that's fine. We'll deal with it. But then we're gonna, work to get right back on it. Right? What happened the first week? I don't think I hit the deadlines at all for anything the first week. Not at all. Why? Because again, when you change your routine, when you're trying to do something new, you make mistakes, right? And you make them repeatedly. This is again not suggesting that it's okay for her husband. This is saying this is part of what happens when you change up your routine. You need to um, build in, the fact that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to need to evaluate and say, is my time frame too tight? Is this or that, whatever, right? You have to be able to adapt and overcome. And it's a lot easier said than done. So we're going to come back to this point in just a minute, because she unintentionally mentions or circles back to this issue later on. So, but I just wanted to point that out. Okay. That yes, he probably promised and then didn't deliver. And it probably was frustrating. Now, the one thing I will point out is that she does say, like, I felt disrespected. And then, she was like, hey, why didn't you do this? And he was like, look, I was late for work. And then she's like, oh, I can't believe you don't even care about me. Like, that's actually not true. Probably not true. Right? That is a self-imposed presumption on your part. You imposed that idea upon your husband. Right? And whether you're the woman or the man, assuming that they did it on purpose, that's wrong. And you shouldn't do it. Let's continue.
Doesn't care about the impact on me, and he doesn't see how every single thing in our home happens because I ask him to do it, or because I do it myself, or because I planned and organized it.
You noticing a theme here? We can summarize the theme here in one word. I. I, I, I. I did this. I planned this. I'm the project manager. I. See what I mean about self-imposed?
The diaper bag is full because I filled it, right? I put the wipes in there. And I felt so frustrated. And I remember thinking, what's the point? What's the point of doing this with someone else? I might as well just do it alone. And it's not because my husband didn't love me or he did anything to me. And it's not because I didn't love him, but because I felt so taken advantage of in our relationship. And this dynamic.
So it's kind of interesting because a moment ago, she's like blaming him. She's like, well, you You didn't care about me. And then she's like, well, it's not that he didn't love me. Well, which is it? Should make up your mind. Husbands out there, like I'm gonna take a little jab at the women, but husbands, you ever felt like your wife sent you two different signals? It's exactly what happened here, right? She's like, well, I the trash was overfilling and I had to get the sippy cup out of the dishwasher and and he didn't even care about me. Well, it's not because he didn't love me. Well, okay, well, pick. Pick a side, lady.
Doesn't happen by accident, right? It's not like my husband did it to me, but we've been raised in this society that tells men and women who they should be in marriages and what it looks like to be a good mom versus a good dad. And we know the bar for moms is way up here and the bar for dads is way down here. And we fell into these.
I actually disagree. I quite disagree. I've talked about this before. And my friends that go to church tell me it's not terribly different than when I used to go to church in the 90s and the early 2000s. But when I went to church, and this was actually this realization came to me out of a book called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And on Father's Day, it's the message tends to be, men, you need to be better brothers, husbands, fathers, sons. How about how you need to be better, right? You're just not good enough. You're not measuring up. And then on Mother's Day, it's like, here's a carnation. Here's a rose. Your moms do so much. They're so wonderful. And not to say that isn't true, but I do think that there is a disconnect in the expectation of men and women, right? Like nobody, no man has ever said, like men don't get around a campfire and be like, yeah, I'm expecting my wife to do all this and be the project manager. But no man ever says that. No man has that expectation. Those are self-imposed expectations, right? Like that's not what men talk about. Men talk about other things. We'll get into it in a moment.
Norms. We fell into these roles in our family despite the fact that we never wanted to. And I'm lucky, and I say lucky because I have a partner who I know loves me and wants me to be happy and was willing and able to change. And so we did the work to figure out what equity looked like in our relationship. And I can tell you now, 3 years later, that we are happier than ever. Our kids are thriving. Our home runs like a well oiled machine. And that took a lot of work. I want to say it took like 18 months to get there.
All right, there it is. So remember earlier, she was like, hey, I need you to do this, this, and this, and this. Cool. No problems there. That's how a good relationship should work. If you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you should be able to have a conversation with your significant other and tell them, hey, I'm doing all these things. Can you share some of the load? Or can we modify things? Can we adjust our schedule? Whatever the case is, like that's a good thing. No issues there. And then she's like, yeah, it didn't happen. I had to remind him. And then eventually I just felt disrespected. I felt like, well, what was the time frame for that? Was it 18 months? No. It was probably a couple of weeks. I'm guessing, in fairness, right? But this she just told us it took 18 months to get their home to where, just pointing out, she wanted it. She wanted. And it's interesting because she starts the video off talking about what a great husband she has, and she's going on and on and on about her problems, how she feels. And then when it gets resolved after this 18-month intervention, she's like, we are happier more than ever. We, right? Like, but before that, she never described any discontent that her husband had. She described only her own. And then now puts it in the context of we. Well, that's not how it works. If you're the one that's complaining, and then later you're like, well, we're happier. Is it we or is it really you? And you're just not coming to terms with the fact that you imposed a lot of this on yourself.
And it was well worth it. But it is not uncommon. And so if your wife is coming to you and she's saying, I'm burnt out by the mental load and I need you to do more, she's not just saying that because she wants you to do more chores. She's saying that because truly it can hurt your relationship. It can ruin your marriage if you do not participate in an equitable way in your home. And so what does that look like? What does it look like to change these dynamics? Well, we need to really assess in our homes what the work looks like. Because In most homes, the data supports this. Women do a disproportionate amount of the work.
Again, why? Why are you doing a disproportionate amount of the work? Is it because your husband insisted on it, or is it because you insisted on it? And that's the conversation we're not really having. And it's not to say this is not to say that women just do a whole bunch of work necessarily that doesn't need to be done. What I'm saying is, I think in many cases, women have made the decision, women have done things, and then women complain later and say, well, how come you're not doing all this stuff? Because maybe there are two people in the home and the two people don't value certain things in the same way. And so maybe the conversation needs to be not so much how do we get all the things done that I want to get done? How do we determine what needs to be done? When does it need to be done? Who needs to do it? Right? Or maybe you just say, like, look, you do this, I will take care of this. And if this becomes a problem, the way that you're doing it, then we can sit down and have a conversation. But you have to be open to hearing that it's not going to be done your way or in your time frame. And if you're not open, then the reason again that you're the project manager is because you are making all of the decisions effectively.
They just do. They do more of the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and the childcare while also working full time. And men have more time for things like their hobbies, like golf, for example, or just working out, running a marathon, right? And so we need to have hard conversations about what our time looks like, what our labor in the home looks like, what is invisible labor. We have to talk about these things. And when we don't, the alternative is that you no longer have a marriage or you
All right. So basically, she goes on and on and on for like 5 minutes. And at no point, not a single moment in there, did she have a time where she said, here's what I was doing wrong. Now, if you were to ask me, if you were to say, DL, why did your first marriage fail? I'm not going to give you a long list of reasons of what my wife did or did not do, my ex wife. I'm going to tell you, here are the things that I didn't do right. Here are the areas where I made some mistakes and I needed to improve, right? Because at the end of the day, I can only improve me. That's it. I can have a conversation with my wife if I don't like something that she's doing, and I can say, "Hey, I don't really like this. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what we can come up with as a resolution for this particular issue." Same thing in reverse. My wife can only fix her. She cannot fix me, right? Ladies, I'm sorry. You can't fix him. You cannot fix him. Men, you cannot fix her. You can only fix yourself. Period. That's who you should worry about. That doesn't mean you don't have a conversation about untoward things. Now let me talk about this idea about self-imposition because I think memes are a great way to illustrate this. And I'm going to put some memes up on the screen. And for my folks that are listening by audio, I will describe the memes to the best of my ability since you're not able to see them. So here we go. Here's the first meme. It says 9 out of 10 husbands agree that their wives are always right. The 10th one mysteriously disappeared and hasn't been heard ever since. Ha 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 ha. Right? And we all laugh at this kind of joke, right? Like, yeah. What do we say? Happy what? Happy wife, happy life. That's the common phrase. Why do we say that? If the wife's not happy, nobody's happy. What are we telling people? We're telling people that the wife's desires are more important. We're telling men that you need to do everything you can to make your wife happy or you will have an unhappy life. There's another phrase, and I'm drawing a blank on it right now. But it basically splits it and makes it more even. Maybe somebody will throw it in the chat. They'll remember, they'll know the phrase. But again, it's a funny meme. There's a certain truth to it. But let's put this in the context of frustrated women. All right. Let's see here. Let's the next one. All right. Every time you talk to your wife, you should always remind yourself This conversation will be recorded for training and quality purposes. Hmm. Ladies, have you ever been angry at your husband because he didn't take out the trash? And then all of a sudden you bring up something from 6 months ago that's completely unrelated. And then your husband has to now try to defend himself, not just against maybe this one thing that he didn't do, but the other thing that you're now bringing up that has no relationship to this whatsoever, right? Or four or five things, because sometimes that happens as well, right? Again, this is a meme that illustrates the dynamic between male and female relationships. Women will bring up something from years ago. Remember that time you were looking at that one girl? Blah, blah. It's like, well, okay. Yeah, but I don't really know what that has to do with today. Okay. It's a little unclear. Okay. So again, if you want to talk about disproportionate, think about how men are treated in a relationship. Let's see. Marriage is simple. Your wife does whatever she wants and you do whatever she wants, right? I mean, how many times have we heard that? Like, again, that's kind of playing on the happy wife, happy life. So, if women do not want the disproportionate amount of decision making in project management, perhaps we say marriage is simple and then we say something other than she does what she wants, you do what she wants. We say, hey, you make a mutual decision together. And sometimes you do what she wants, and sometimes you do what he wants. Let's see, what's the next one here? Here's this depicting a couple like in a marriage counseling session. And the counselor says, do you feel dominated by your wife? And the wife says, no, he doesn't. Right? Like, it's a funny meme, but is there any truth to it? Is there any truth to a woman that wants to talk over or talk on behalf of her husband, right? And not give him the say. Like what is and it's again, these are funny memes. I get it, and we can laugh, but there is a certain truth to them when it comes in the context of women getting to do having to do all these responsibilities. Don't worry, we're not done. We're not men. You're not off the hook yet. We're tackling one side here. Here's another one. And I actually love this couple. This is Chad Sexton. So him and his wife have some hilarious videos on Facebook, and they're great. And she says, "Honey, can you give me some money?" And he says, "No, not today. I have a headache." Now, what is he hint? What is the hint here? The hint is, and there are plenty of reels and shorts to that go into this. The husband wants a little nookie, and the wife has excuse after excuse. I've got a headache. It's been a long day. I'm tired. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. Is that all you ever think about? Right. And there's actually, and I didn't pull it up, and maybe I should have, but there's a couple on Facebook. Um, I think it's under the wife's account, and her name is Katie McCabe, I think, and they do a lot of marriage videos, and they tackle both sides. So they're not like, oh, men, you're all bad, or women, you're all bad. They tackle both sides. And there's an interesting video that they did a while back where the husband like they're doing a skit, and the husband comes to her and he's like, hey, do you think tonight we could be a little intimate? And then she's like, "Yeah, that's not really a super priority right now, blah, blah, blah." And she's kind of downplaying the need. She's like, "Is that all you ever think about?" Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She's like, "I got all these other things to do. I'm just gonna go and do this." And then Katie stops and she's like, "Now imagine if this were on the other side of the on the if this played out the other way around." And so then they do a reverse kind of skit where she comes to him and she's like, "Hey, we haven't spent quality time together. We've been really busy. Do you think tonight we could just settle down and spend a little quality time together?" And then the husband gives her the exact same response that he got in the previous skit when he was asking for intimacy. And he's like, "Yeah, that's not really a priority right now, blah, blah, blah." And I'm not really doing the video that much justice. But the point being is that they flipped the table here. They flipped the script. And that's what's being hinted at here is like, no, I have a headache, right? Because while women like to say we do all the, or they do all we, they do all of the responsibility, there are things that men have their own frustrations about, and they're not being addressed equally. You want to talk equity? How about you talk about addressing things that men are seeking? Men do seek intimacy, and many like there was a there was a goofy like Excel spreadsheet. I don't know if it was real. Hopefully, it was not real, but it was like this spreadsheet where this guy allegedly wrote down every time he asked for intimacy from his wife and she turned him down, he wrote down the reason. And I think actually Katie McCabe, they did a skit on that too, where she's like, is that all you ever think about? And he's like, well, here, look. And he pulls out this sheet and he's like, in the last year, I asked, 214 times and 32 times you said you had a headache. This many times you said this many times you said this. And he's like going down the line. And so like, I think this is a very poignant meme right here, to point out like, what would it feel like if the woman came and said, hey, can you give me a few dollars? I want to go to the store, which I know that's a little on the old school side. Like that doesn't really happen. Like that was more of my parents' generation where you had those things. But I think the point still remains like, hey, can I get some money? Nah, I got a headache. Like, how would that feel if you asked your husband for something that you felt was important to you, and his answer was, I got a headache. I'm sorry. And if it was once, probably not a big deal. But if it was repeated, all of a sudden now you're gonna be like, wow, I feel kind of disrespected. Like, why does he always have a headache? Why does he never want to do this? Whatever this is. All right, let's go on. We got a couple more here. Again, this is from Chad Sexton. He's like, I think you're right. And she's like, I didn't say anything yet. And he goes, I'm just trying to save time. Now, how many times have men and women been in an argument and the man feels like he cannot win? Right? Like how many times and sometimes the woman will come and she'll say, "Hey, I'm very upset about this." And the husband's like, "Well, I think I think you're misunderstanding something." And he's trying to bring some rationality to it. And then, it just ends up in this big long fight. He's trying to defend himself and he basically loses the argument. But also, men sometimes will come to their wives and say, "Well, I'm having a problem here. I don't like this. Can we talk about it?" And it ends up in the same way. They end up in the big long argument. And what does he have to do? He has to basically give in, even though he brought the issue in the first place. That's not equitable. It's not equitable to treat your husband that way. It's not equitable to make a whole 5-minute video and only talk about his failures and not once mention a single thing that you did wrong. Let's see. Oh, I love this one. This is funny. Before I got married, it's a man and a woman in a car. Before I got married, I'd just plow into the back of cars because I didn't have a wife gasping and screaming when someone hit the brakes 3 miles ahead. Men, how many times have you, if you're married or if you got a girlfriend or whatever, how many times have you been in the car and your wife's like, or your girlfriend has been like, yeah, why didn't you turn that way? Why didn't you go this way? It would have been faster to go if you went this way. Why are you driving so fast? Why are you so close to that car? How come you're this? How come you're that? Right? And it's like this constant backseat driving. And you're like, before I met you, I was actually able to drive quite successfully. And I can still drive quite successfully. Right? Let's see. Last meme. A good woman is by your side during bad times to tell you that none of this would happen if you would just listen to her. Okay. All right. So there we are. We have like the memes. If you look at the memes, you will see a disproportionate amount of criticism toward the men. And yet we have videos like this, and a lot of women responded to it. Like now, a lot of people were trashing her, and for various reasons, which I don't think are necessary or useful. But there was a lot of women that were like, "Yeah, yeah, I totally get it," and I don't disagree with her necessarily. In fact, here's what I said about that. I went and I said, "A man's perspective." I agree. But the woman in the video misses key context. Marriage is a two-way street, after all. Many women take on a bigger home role, yet often impose it upon themselves. Take a lighthearted example. Memes and videos show women asking men to pick a restaurant and then rejecting every idea until it's theirs. You ever had that one happen? I have, right? Like, and you're like, hey, your wife's like, hey, not my, I think it was my first wife. I think my current wife, my wife now, she doesn't do that. But my ex-wife would sometimes, and I'm not trashing her. Like I'm just using this as an illustration. Um, But and this is a common thing that's happened with men. Like, hey, you want to go out to eat? And wife's like, yeah. And he's like, where do you want to go? And she's like, you pick. And he's like, okay. And he's like, how about we go to Red Lobster? And she's like, oh, I don't like that place. Okay, okay. How about the Mexican place down the road? Oh man, that place made me sick the last time we went. Okay, okay. How about this place? No, 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 no. And it's just like this man is just constantly guessing. And then finally he guesses the restaurant that she actually wanted to go to in the first place, but she didn't tell him. Like if he says, where would you like to go? If you're going to cut down every idea that he puts out, then just answer from the get-go, I would like to go here. Right? Quit playing games because that is not equitable. That is not you treating your partner with respect. If a man has to play a guessing game, because a woman wouldn't like it if that was happening to her, right? If if she was like, "Hey, where would you like to go eat?" and he's like, "You pick," and then she just kept naming places, and he was like, "No," shooting him down, she would be very upset. She would be like, "Dude, seriously?" And she would be rightfully upset because that's not a good way to treat your significant other. I went on and I said, "This adds to their home dominance. It's funny and we laugh, but it extends to other choices. Kitchen towels, or bath towels. Hey, don't use those towels. Those are for the guests, right? Right? Who's making that decision? It's not the man. The woman has made the decision on the towels, on which towels you can use, how the towels are folded, all that good stuff. Movies, same thing with movies, or restaurants, or attending her preferred gatherings that men don't enjoy, all of which use mental energy. And then I went on and I said, second, women too often complicate what should be a simple and easy win for both him and her. And then I said, this video is appropriate. It's the other half of the picture. And that's the video we're going to get into in just a moment here. But first, we're going to take a look at some comments and we're going to see if I'm being ripped apart by all the ladies in the audience. Hopefully not. So let's see what we've got here. Let's see. My VA lady says, tomorrow is going to be an awesome. Oh, wait a minute. Tomorrow is going to be an awesome dad talk episode with Mark K. I think so. I think it'll be fun. Let's see. Mark K is hilarious. Get ready for jokes. His kids are awesome too. All right, awesome. Let's see. My VA says, in our household, my husband shops, cooks, and cleans up the kitchen. I take care of cleaning the rest of the house. I'm OCD though, so I really don't want him cleaning. Just to point out, because I know that if women watch this, they'll be like, I can't believe that man. He just doesn't understand. He's just, he's trashing women. It's funny because in our house, it's kind of the same way. I do the cooking. I do most of the cleaning. I do I don't do all of the cooking, almost all of it. Right. And I do we probably shop about 50-50 for groceries. Right. And I'm very dominant about the kitchen. If you come in and you're like, how can I help? I usually, my answer is usually, I'm fine. Let me work. Like it's just stay out of my way. That's usually my answer. Right. And as far as the cleaning, we have split our chores. But I have certain ways that I like to have things cleaned, and I will re-clean things if I feel like they're not done to my level. However, I don't give anybody a hard time because I've recognized that this is a me thing. I want it done this way. So therefore I will do it and I will not complain. Right. Now that's not to say that I never complain about stuff. Like, look, my wife and I are both humans. Okay. We have our errors. We have our ways. We have our idiosyncrasies like that exist. But just so the ladies out there know, like I do most of the cooking here. I pack my son's lunch most of the time. Right. Like we have determined what chores in the house work for us. And like if I see my wife taking out the trash, I rush over there to grab it because I'm like, that's not a woman's job. This is a man's job. Take out the dang on trash. So I'm not just trashing women here. And we'll get to the men here in just a minute. But first, let us go to a little quick intermission and then we will be back. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so we're going to look at the second video, and I call it the second half to, again, that first video that we just watched. But again, it was not a response video. It just happened to be one that I saw, and I thought it was very, very useful. So let's take a watch and take a watch. Who is this guy? All right. Anyway, so let's play the video.
Tip for the ladies: men love quests. No, I know, not all men, but most men. Okay, and all the men I want in my life, they like quests.
Okay, well, this is crazy. I love this. I thought this video was amazing. This is probably like I could watch this like 14 times in a row. And I like how she's like, all the men I want in my life love Quest. Like this is already starting to be positive. So let's continue.
Most men hate puzzles, but they love quests. Most men don't want you to be coy and confusing and elusive. They want you to have very clear quests that you tell them, this is exactly what I want. I want you to do this, and I will be happy when you do it. My friend was
All right. She's absolutely correct. Like in the last video, you know, the woman was like, oh, well, you know, you didn't do this thing. And then I felt like disrespected and all this other stuff. Right. And then later she's like, yeah, it took us 18 months to work it out. So clearly she didn't recognize that it does take time to get into a new routine. And so like this woman already seems to recognize that, you know, what motivates men. Right. And it's not just intimacy. Like that's a big part of it, but that's not the end of the story. Right. There are plenty of things that motivate men to want to do things for their women. Let's continue.
telling me that her boyfriend offered to scrape off her car the other day. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. She's like, yeah, I told him not to, but I thought it was nice he offered. And I was like, oh, you told him not to? She's like, yeah, I didn't want to be difficult and inconvenience him. And I'm like, but didn't he happily offer to do it? And she's like, yeah, but I told him I didn't want him to. I'm like, oh, you didn't want him to? Like, you wanted to do it yourself? And she's like, no, I would have loved if he did it for me, but I didn't want to be difficult. And I'm like, honey, you have to remember, men love quests. If you don't want him to do something because you want to do it yourself, that's totally fine. But do not squash yourself down and deny yourself for no reason. Instead, let them do the quest for you and then be super appreciative and kind and happy about it.
Okay. 2 parts there. Number 1, let him do the quest, right? Let him do the thing that's going to make you happy. And then the second part is express that happiness. Be happy and excited that he did it. I saw a post the other day, and it was like, it was a woman, and she said, I think she was responding to something, and she was like, I think one woman said, like, woman A had said, like, I'm so thankful to have the husband who, you know, when I was really busy, would go and pick up my children for me, or pick up our children, you know, from school. And this other woman was like, oh, I can't believe, and she's like, why are you thanking your husband for doing his job? Right. And a lot of people are like, you know, because a thank you is nice to hear. And this actually happened here in Florida. While I'm a big critic of our governor, Ron DeSantis, his wife had went through cancer, and they were in an interview a while back, and she was like, yeah, she was like, he, you know, took time out of his busy day, as, you know, running the whole entire state of Florida while I was having cancer, to go and pick up our kids. Now, I presume that if you're the governor, you could hire that out, right? But he went and did it. And then she just expressed an appreciation for it. And a lot of people are like, why would you express appreciation for your husband for doing, they're his kids too. He should pick them up. Yes, that is true. But again, think about the context here. Think about in the context of women saying, I have to do all this stuff. Okay, well, if you have to do all this stuff and you're bitter about it, and then your man does something for you, perhaps it's worthwhile to say thank you, right? Just a simple thank you. And to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with being more polite or being polite as possible, as often as possible. My wife and I thank each other and our son all the time. And most of the time, I would assume, I haven't really evaluated it, but I would assume that most of the time that we thank each other, it's for things that are kind of like an expectation. Hey, thanks for doing the dishes. Thanks for picking up the kid, right? Like, well, somebody had to do the dishes. Somebody had to pick up the kids. Like, that was a responsibility that fell on both of us. So one of us is going to have to do it. Why would the other thank us? Why would the other person thank? I'm trying to think of how to say that. Like, if I like, it's a responsibility for both of us. So if I pick up my son, why would my wife say thank you for picking up my son? Why? Because she's appreciative of it, right? It's a nice thing. Hey, maybe she normally does it, but then I did it this one day. Hey, thanks for doing that. Thanks for chipping in. It's not that hard, and it's an easy win. Let's continue listening.
Nothing makes a man happier than completing a quest for you and you being happy and appreciative about it. So when he offers to scrape your car off, say, "That would be amazing. Thank you so much." And then when he comes in, tell him, "Thank you. That just made my day so much brighter." Maybe make him a warm cup of coffee so that it's ready right when he comes in. It's like a video game, okay? He did his quest and then you gave him a resource in return.
That is an amazing analogy. Absolutely amazing analogy. A video game. I mean, think about it. Like, men love video games. Okay. Like, last time I looked, it was probably about 10 years ago. The biggest purchasers of video games were like 35 years old. Right. And men love video games. Why do we love video games? Because we work hard to do this thing and we fail over and over and over until we get it right. And nobody gets on us on our case because we keep failing. We recognize when we fail. This is going back to that other video, right? When a woman says, "Hey, will you start taking out the trash in the morning or before I get up so that I have a nice clean house and I don't have to worry about, trash falling over and, telling you to do it." And okay, now in my opinion, taking out the trash is a man's job, and he should do it when he sees that the trash needs to be taken out. But if that's not the case, right? If that's not what's happening, and the woman asks, then you need to have enough time. I don't know what that time frame is, but you need to work it out and be like, all right, it's going to be some failures. If that's not part of his routine, and men, if that's not part of your routine, make it part of your routine, right? That's the other half of all of this. Men, you got to deliver. You can't just be like, oh, a deal said I was making mistakes because, I haven't got, no, 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 no. I'm just saying, like, the mistakes are inevitable, but you have to keep working on it. And the sooner that you get those mistakes resolved, the sooner that you become consistent, the better off, right? You can't just string it along. That's not going to work, man. All right, let's get back to this woman talking some good stuff here.
Leveled up in the game. He's winning now. You gave him the gift of winning. When a man loves you, nothing will make him happier than knowing he made you a little happier.
It's absolutely true. Women, you have to understand this. We love making our lady happy. We will, like, men would start a war just to please their woman, right? Like, we see it in the movies. Like, Troy, like, loved a woman so much that he started a whole war just to have her, right? Like, men will just, there's a video from Shoe on Head, and she's I'm trying to think of how to say this on a more family friendly show, but she's pointing out and she's like, men will go through great lengths to get pizza. We're not talking pizza. Work through the logic here, folks. It's a similar word, same number of letters, right? But she's like, they'll do this, this, and this, and this, and this. So, like, Shoe on Head's going on, and she's like, pizza, 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 pizza. She's like, you're talking about all these things that men do to get pizza. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. And she's right, but it's more than that. Like, bringing a smile to a woman's face is exciting. If I take out the trash and my wife's just like, she comes up and she gives me a great big hug and a kiss, like, that makes me feel really, really good. And I'm no dummy. I know that it's my responsibility. I know that maybe last week I didn't do it so good, right? I let it pile up a little bit too long, right? I know this stuff, but that's anger doesn't like anger is a bad motivator. It does motivate men, but it's a bad motivator. If you really want to motivate men, then be appreciative when they do something. And again, men. Now we're starting to get into the men's side. Men, you have to deliver. It's just like the boss at work. No excuses. Continue.
Yeah, a quest. I'll be like, ooh, ice cream sounds so good right now. My husband will be like, I can go get you some. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that right now. He's like, are you sure? I'm happy to. My first instinct is, no, I don't want to inconvenience him. But if I want that ice cream and it will truly make me happy to get that ice cream, I should let him go on that quest. Will not inconvenience him. It makes him feel like he's winning the game. Don't be a jerk. Don't make people do things for no reason. Be appreciative and happy when somebody puts that effort in for you. But honey, they love a good quest. Why do you think there's so many memes of boyfriends and husbands filling a girl's water cup? I'll tell you why. It's a quick, easy quest. If the quest involves something that makes him feel kind of manly and powerful, that's a double points quest.
All right. I love what she puts on the screen here. Triple points if he gets to use an obscure tool. Yeah. So my wife was renovating a house a while back, and she said, "Hey, can you build me some doors for this?" Like it was like this inset shelves. There's like there's like a series of like 2 or 3 shelves, and it was inset into the wall. And she was like, "Hey, I would like some cabinet doors. Can you build me some cabinet doors?" Now I didn't use an obscure tool, but I got to use my tools, and she was proud of it. I was proud of it because she was so excited, right? Like I built this thing for my wife, some cabinet doors, like just super simple door, and there was nothing fancy about the doors, right? They were just some like like any man that can use some tools and build anything, like even, even if you're just a super simple hobbyist, you could have built these doors. It was not that complicated. This is not one of those, this is not one of those, this wouldn't have been one of those videos from a woodworker online and where the men are like, man, I wish I had that kind of skill and, to be able to pull that off. No, it wasn't. It was totally simple. I know it was simple. I don't know if my wife knows it was simple. Hopefully she doesn't listen to this and find out that it was super simple. No, I'm just kidding. But it was just great how happy she was. And then she told me, she said, the people that were looking at the house, she's like, those people that were looking at the house, they were like, wow, this is a really nice door. And they just kind of made a joke and they were like, I want to buy the house just based on this door. And then she told me that story and I was like, what? I was like, I'm sorry. I was like, what? Then, so like it was just exciting. It was exciting to make her happy. It was exciting to make her look good in front of her customers, right? Like that's exciting. And that all comes down to appreciation, right? Just being appreciative when a man does something for you. And sometimes it's something that's not an obligation. Like there was no obligation to build any doors, right? Sometimes it is an obligation. Pick up your kids, take out the trash. But it's nice to be appreciated, whether you're a man or a woman, and it's nice to hear about it. And so in our house, we say thank you quite often. Let's go.
My husband just put together a little vanity for me, and I came upstairs and I just started jumping up and down. And I was like, oh my God, it looks so good. He's just like beaming, like, I did it. Look how happy I made her. Related pro tip, don't say sorry, say thank you. Sorry, I'm so annoying. Thank you for listening to me. Sorry, I'm running late. Thank you for waiting for me. Sorry, I'm crying. Thank you for creating this safe space for me to cry.
All right. So there you have it. I think that the answer to a lot of the complaints from women out there is, number one, you have to evaluate and say, how much of this responsibility have you taken on yourself? How much have you decided? And then not only that, how much have you decided it has to be done a particular way? And if it's not done that way, then you're going to be upset. Like how many men have said, hey, yeah, I went and tried to do the laundry and my wife said I didn't fold the towels right. Right. And just ask yourself, like, do you want him to help you with the laundry? Or is it so important that the towels are folded a specific way that you're willing to risk him not wanting to do it at all? Which is it? Take your pick, right? Because if my wife asked me to fold the towels and I fold the towels, and then she later comes in and she says, yeah, the towels weren't folded correctly and I had to redo your work. Guess who's not happy? Me, right? Also her, but like I'm not happy. Why? Because I didn't make her happy. And the answer isn't you just got to do it her way. Because at a certain point, men get exhausted with that. At a certain point, men are tired of this idea of everything has to be her way. And so then we stop doing it, or we put a half-assed effort into it. But if you tell me, hey, thanks for folding the towels, and you leave them alone because you recognize that the way they're folded doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. Your relationship, if you like, your relationship should not depend on how the towels are folded. That like, you should be able to look at it and say, "Hey, you know what? He folded the towels. Awesome. Let's move on to the next thing. Thank you, hubby, for folding the towels. Give him a kiss. Move on about your day." And guess what? He'll want to do it again, right? Because the quest was fulfilled. Men like quest. Now, men, let me give you a few minutes here because I think I've covered the women pretty well. Men, you need to deliver. You also need to speak up, but you need to do it in a way that is not destructive. So if your wife is upset, you can't be like, "God, you're a bitch." Like, if you ever said that, like, you really got some problems. In 17 years of marriage, I've never once said that about my wife or to my wife. Either one of them, my ex-wife or my current wife. Never once. Now, I might have said a few other things, not like, some other nasty words, but I might have, you know, said some things that I probably, shouldn't have said, like, "Hey, you're being a bit rude right now," stuff like that, that aren't very productive. But there is a certain point for which you have definitely went too far, right? You need to learn to have some patience, right? Because this is the person that you supposedly love. And everything that I said about women applies to you as well, just in the more manly way, right? This is a different person. And if you want them to be, you know, happy with you, number one, you need to deliver. Number two, you know what? Randomly say thank you. Randomly get her some flowers or whatever it is that your wife likes. Maybe your wife's not a big flower person, so don't get her flowers if that's the case, right? Maybe she's into something else. Maybe she likes plates. Go get her plate, go take her to buy plates or whatever. Like figure out what makes her happy, what kind of things, and then go try to do that. Maybe she likes sitting down and watching a movie, right? So make sure that you carve out time and go watch a movie with her, right? Like those kind of things. But the number one thing that men have to do is they have to deliver. So while yes, if there are responsibilities in the home that you can pick up and take up and complete, you need to be consistent about it. And I'm going to tell you, man, will tell you, I am not always consistent about things. My wife is very patient, but I work very hard to try to be consistent about the things that she's expecting me to do, right? With the exception of the calendar. The calendar, she knows. The producer, the VA lady knows. Everybody knows that calendars are not my thing. I was just telling my wife that last night. I was like, that's the one thing. If there's one thing that I've gotten in trouble for at work in my entire adult career, more often, it's calendars. I got in trouble, sort of trouble, just the other day, you know, with something. And my boss is like, "Dude, it was an email," and I was like, "Yeah, sorry." Like, calendars and email are not my thing, but I keep trying. All right, that was a side note. But anyway, the thing that you want to do, man, is you want to deliver. It's the same way as when you go to work. It's the same way as when you play a video game. You keep trying until you get it right. Think about a video game. You're trying to beat that boss. What do? You keep trying and you keep trying. And then eventually you beat the boss. And then you can tell some other man, "This is how I beat the boss." Right? There's a perfect analogy. Same thing applies in your home. If what will make your wife happy is you taking out the trash, which I think is a reasonable request, there is nothing wrong with that. Um, then take out the trash. Just start making a point. When you wake up, you come down, you're trying to get your coffee, you just take a look at the trash can. And if it needs to be taken out, then you take it out, right? And you get it out there. And the other thing that you need to do is you need to communicate. You need to have a conversation with your wife. You need to sit down and be like, "Hey, if your wife's feeling frustrated, what's going on?" Like, you should know your wife well enough if you've been married for any amount of time, right? Any significant amount of time, like a year or two, whatever. Like, depending on how long it took you to get married, will depend on how long after marriage you should be able to tell when your wife is frustrated. If you got married after 3 weeks of knowing her, then it might take a little bit longer. If you were dating for like a year and a half, by the time you get married, you should know your wife. You should be able to say, "Oh, look, she's kind of frustrated. How can I help? What can I do?" And then go do that, right? Sometimes you might not even have to ask. All right. So for men, You absolutely need to do, and you need to treat her with absolute respect. You like, I look at it, and this is going to get me in trouble. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I think men and women are different. I think women tend to be more emotive, right? I'm not saying emotional. I think men and women can be emotional, but I think they express it differently. I think women tend to be more emotive, and men tend to express it like in anger or silence. Right? Neither one of those are particularly useful necessarily. I mean, they have their moments. Um, I can be silent when I know that it's better because I tend to be mouthy. Right? You got to know thyself. It's something that I say often on this show. Know thyself. Know who you are, and make sure that you adjust accordingly so that you're not adding to the problem. Because if your wife is frustrated and then you're a jerk, now she's frustrated and she's angry because you were a jerk. So don't be a jerk, right? And sometimes you might need to bite your tongue. Maybe sometimes your wife is not being rational. Ladies, sometimes your husband isn't being rational. Sometimes you got to bite your tongue. That's how, sometimes my wife will, no, she'll tell you, she'll say, sometimes I'm not being rational. She might not say it that way. She'll just be like, he's in a mood or whatever. And she lets me be. She lets me work it out. Right. And then sometimes I'll do the same thing. Like I'll see that she's in a mood, and maybe I'll inquire, and I'll be able to tell, like, hey, there's nothing to solve here right now. Let it go. And then maybe I just go and do something, make sure that I do something that I know that bothers her. Like maybe there's some dishes in the sink, and I'm like, all right, let me just go get those cleaned up real quick. One less thing that she has to look at, you know? And these are easy wins, man. Like, you can go do this. You can look around the house and just, if you got a few minutes, look around the house. Be like, what can I do that just might make her day a little bit brighter? Because you shouldn't always have to ask her. So, I mean, again, you should know your wife, and you should know what motivates her, what makes her tick. If you know that she comes in and the first thing that she looks at is the kitchen, and that just disrupts her mood, good or bad, makes it worse or disrupts a good mood, then throw in, a little dishwashing every great once in a while. And ladies, when your man does that, what do? Thank you. That was so nice of you. Right? Because that is the symbiotic relationship that you should have. You should be looking out for one another. You should be giving each other praise when you can. And marriage is the one time, the one place where I would say promiscuity with praise is appropriate. And children, right? But we're talking about marriages right now. I think that is the way. Like, I mean, you don't have to fawn all over them and be like, "Oh my God, you're such a manly man for taking out the trash." You don't have to do that. Just a simple thank you will do, right? Same thing with your wife. If she picked up the kids, or she did something good, just give her, maybe not a high five per se, but the equivalent of a high five. Just give her a great big hug and be like, "Man, you're an awesome wife. I just want you to know that." Just reinforce that, because everybody is trying hard. Everybody lives in a world full of frustration and stress. And what better thing can you ask for than a partner who will recognize that, and occasionally just say, "Hey, look, I think you're doing a great job. You're an awesome mom. You're an awesome wife. You know that?" And it shouldn't be on Mother's Day. It shouldn't be on her birthday. It could just be randomly. You notice something. Like, I'll give you an example, man. Here's a good example. And there's plenty of videos for this too, where there's that video where there's a whole bunch of them, where it's like the woman's like, things that turn my husband on. And then it shows like the woman walking, and she's like, I walk. And then she's like, I smile at him. You know, I take a shower. I like all these things, these simple everyday activities. And it's like the man's like, yeah, baby, what's up? Okay. Same concept. When you're looking at your wife and you're like, whatever she's doing, if she's standing and you're like, what a hot babe. You could say you're a hot babe, and that works too. And that's good to hear from time to time. But you can also just be like, you're an awesome wife. That's it. Out of nowhere, for no particular reason. Just say, I was just thinking about it. You're an awesome wife. I'm so glad to have you. That's great. and you don't have to be self-deprecating. You don't have to say, man, I really, how do they say? I leveled up. I married above my pay grade. In fact, here's a fun thing for you. My wife actually would get mad at me for saying, like, I would make a joke. I'd be like, yeah, I'd be like, I married above my pay grade, and she'd get mad and be like, stop saying that. She's like, that's not why I didn't. She's like, I picked you because I thought you were a great person. And it was like she would get mad at me for this, and it was like a self-deprecating joke. But she was like, no, respect yourself to know that you were picked for a good reason. Like, oh, okay. Right. And it was kind of funny because I was like, man, like every other couple in the world seems to be cool with this joke, but not her. And that was what made her feel insulted. Yeah. So don't self-deprecate. I mean, maybe from time to time that might work, but just a simple flattery. Just, you're a great mom. You're a great wife. If she has a job and she's telling you about it, maybe when she's telling you about her frustration, you don't just chime in and be like, well, I think you're a great worker. That has its moments. But maybe when she's telling you about something that she's achieved at work, you can be like, man, you're awesome. And I think you really deserve that. And just give her praise and be like, I know that you worked hard for it, and just let her know, because it's your job. This is where I'm a really hit hard on the men. Your job in your home is to lead. You cannot be a leader if you are failing to do things, or you are not reinforcing that everybody has value and is and in the things that they're doing. So reinforce it. Let them know, and make sure it's an honest one. Like, don't just make up stuff. Like, wow, you worked hard on that project. You did such a great job. It could be as simple as, hey, thanks for cooking dinner tonight. That was a really great meal. I love the way that you made that fish. Again, don't make up stuff, but do look for opportunities to say something honest that's pleasant, that reinforces that you care about this person, and then look for opportunities to deliver. And always, always work hard to deliver on your promises as consistently as possible. That's what it means to be a man. And if you're not doing that, you need to. So men, level up. Women, love up. How about that? I'm ending the show. All right, let's see what we got here. My VA lady says, it's true. Liberty Dad does not like calendars. I don't. I get in so much trouble for calendars and stuff. I've been yelled at more in the workplace over calendars and email than anything else ever. And I've gotten in trouble like in the past. Not as much these days. I'm a little bit better. But man, there's just something about email and calendars that I hate. All right, folks. Thanks for joining the show today. I'm going to head on out. I will see you tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. I'm not going to stream tomorrow morning because I am streaming tomorrow evening. So I will catch you at 6:30 p.m. with Mark K. Have a great day. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.